anyone listening who's been looking for answers for sleep, if you're tired, if you're always exhausted, I mean, this is going to be a really important conversation.
The liver goes from a nice sponge that's pretty much a shapeshifter and has three parts to it that are constantly moving and doing their thing and filtering blood and processing hormones and doing over 2,000 tasks a day. A light, and I'll often take my shirt off and it'll just be beaming through on, even if it's a cold day, that sun's beaming off, and just taking that in. The food I'm eating is full of light. It's made from light. We're solar beings. We consume the living food. There are trillions and trillions of what we call, and you'll like this name, Carl, live elevated microbiome. Then when does the liver get to cleanse? If you're doing that every day and you're bombarding your body with those fats and proteins in the morning all the time,
Plant-based or meat or whatever diet you're talking about, carbs, protein, fat, whether it's sprayed or not sprayed, is a massive kōrero.
plants dig their roots into the minerals and the nutrients, the vitamins in the soil. The plant then, through photosynthesis powered by light, bring that up into the stem, into the leaf, and personally, I prescribe to the morning for that. And the reason for that is because our liver is going into its cleansing mode. Now, those things aren't bad foods. They just need to be appropriated into the right time of the day. We're putting ourselves in a pre-diabetic state. And so what I always say to people is keep your fats and proteins for the afternoon that I'm climbing with. And they're all, I'm not being rude here or anything, but they're all flagging by midday. They're all starting to crack open their V's and all the rest of it. And I'll hand them over, we become acidic through those ways, or too much cane sugar, too much salt, all that stuff. When we really load those things up, we become acidic. We get acidosis of the blood. The body's going to pull calcium from its.
Yeah, it's such an important conversation, getting away from junk food. So it's, I think, 300,000 people in New Zealand now diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It's not how reality was for our ancestors. Food was valued. It was quite often saved for appropriate times.
What's actually happening to the body when we're going into fasting? So technically, we're not actually in a fast until, you're 24 hours.
Tēnā koutou katoa, coming at you with another kōrero leading into the Aotearoa Men's Wellbeing Summit, 14th to 16th of May in Ōpōtiri on the Coromandel. 3 days of brotherhood, connection, clean eating, movement, leaning into what we're here to do as men, lifting our brothers up, lifting our whānau up, lifting our communities up, stepping into purpose. If you're on a mission of any of those or all of those, we'd love to see you there. And in this conversation today, we're going to dive into some of those themes. And I'm very stoked to have a brother, long-time brother, and I'm stoked to have on the line with me today a brother from many seasons. We've both been through many seasons. JP, John Pellew. How are you, John?
Good, brother. Good to see you again. Good to be on here.
Yeah, awesome, brother. So just some background. I know a few of you listening and watching in will be putting two and two together and linking some of those seasons up. But me and JP go back to the fishing days, with me originally founding Epic Adventures and doing some pretty big days on the water with customers as a fishing guide at Tairua. And around the same time, one of JP's good friends, Tony, started up a fishing store called YeeHaa Fishing with JP. And then I met JP and we spent some quality time on the ocean, brother, catching some amazing fish, a shared love of fishing, and also a lot of time talking fishing and all sorts of other things in store at YeeHaa Fishing Tackle. And then it's really interesting that after that season, we've both gone off on our own journeys, not really talked that much to each other, and then noticed we're both gone without knowing we'd both gone into the well-being space and come back again together, as quite often happens in the universe. You connect in with the people, your tribe, you're supposed to keep connecting in with, and I think that's us, brother. And so John now has a store called Organic Nation, who's one of our major sponsors. Both last year, you put your hand up and got him behind last year's Men's Wellbeing Summit. Thank you, brother. And getting him behind it again this year. And maybe you might want to share just to start off, brother. Tell us a little bit about Organic Nation first and foremost, and then we can go off on some different tangents. But tell us where you are right now.
Yep, sounds good. Well, first of all, I'll start off by saying you're looking very well and healthy there, Carl. I'm glad to see that. And, we've both been through our health challenges, and this sort of leads perfectly into what you've just asked me, why and how and whatnot about the place that I'm in right now, which is Organic Nation. And as you can see here, this is our logo on. And so essentially about, at the time that we were doing a lot of fishing together, my health was collapsing, and we were working hard, we were playing hard, we were eating all kinds of rubbish and whatnot. And I decided at that point to go organic. And that's kind of where this has led to where I am now. So I started up in Auckland when we were doing all the fishing and everything, went organic. And I liked the improvements. And I thought, heck, this has got to be the way. It was a bit more expensive, but I thought, well, if I just kind of dip my toes in and switch out some of the stuff that I was having for organic, that led me to here. When I moved down away from Auckland down to my roots again, which I wanted to be back with family, whānau, and I came back down, I couldn't find an organic shop to save myself. And then finally, someone told me about what was Village Organics at that time, and I began shopping there. And that was down in Frankton, 245 Commerce Street in Frankton, just down by the railway, opposite the pub, at the end of Commerce Street, which is the oldest part of Hamilton, Frankton. And I always liked that part of town. And I went down there. There was a couple that were running it, old, ready to retire. And I said to them when I walked in, after a few months of shopping there, I said to them, "Do you want to sell your shop?" And they said, "Yes." But as we all know, things don't work out like that. It was 2 more years until they finally decided they wanted to sell. And I was already building my Organic Nation business by that time. I was just going to do it warehouse and shipping out and website. And when they finally said, "Hey, we want to sell now," I was like, "Okay, I got my warehouse now." And I decided to buy the building down there because I didn't want to rent off the guy that was the landlord. And so we're pretty well established in that place. We ain't going to be moving anytime soon. And it just means that we're able to put our best foot forward and offer the best product. Initially, I thought that I was just going to take over the store, and it's the old green store. I thought, I'll just keep it running as it is. It's doing all right. And but when I got in there, my OCD kicked in, and I was like, "Nah, no, we've got to change this. This is like a rabbit warren. This is dark, it's dingy, it's got high shelving. And we had a lot of complaints from our customers for various things, new owners. Hey, why don't you do this? This is rubbish, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, we've got to do something here. So that's when I started changing it all around. It's a nice, if you jump on Google Maps, it's a beautiful, bright, clean, white, tidy store with low shelves, and everything's accessible, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful shop. I have to pat myself on the back and all my team members. We've done a good job over the last sort of 9 or 10 years of building that up. And it's all air conditioned. It has refrigerators for Africa because we want to keep our produce fresh and beautiful. And then we ended up switching out a lot of stuff from like a bin-ins type store to as almost 100% fully organic. So we're proud of what we've done so far.
Yeah, brother. Well, YeeHaa was an exceptional and still is an exceptional fishing tackle store. And yeah, when I've been into your shop, Organic Nation in Frankton, a few times now, and the product line is exceptional. The quality is exceptional. And yeah, the layout's exceptional and the knowledge in store is exceptional. So I encourage anyone in that neck of the woods, or if you're traveling through or you just want something to do for the day, take a journey down from Auckland even to check it out. It's well worth the drive in its own right, yeah, to get the quality of information that you can impart as well. And we might dive into some of that on this call. And brother, we might just start off, I think, by talking about the concept of organics in general. And anyone who's been on my retreat will know that I start off by diving into the concept that everything is energy. And so our beliefs, our thoughts dictate our health. Yeah, the quality of the water we drink, the quality of people that we hang around, the music we listen to. But one of the fundamentals is what we eat and what we put into our mouths. And anyone listening who's been looking for answers for sleep, if you're tired, if you're always exhausted, I mean, this is going to be a really important conversation to listen into. Anyone who's feeling burnt out or any physical, even emotional conditions that you have, this conversation we're going to have around organics and food is really important. Quite often at a retreat, men will say after a meal, man, we had a lot of food there, Carl, but I don't feel bloated. I feel really, and I'm going to use the word, I feel really light. Yeah, and I think this is where we're going to go, I think, brother, with the conversation around organics, because most of the food we eat, it's about taking on the light that comes from the sun, right? With plants, the photosynthesis of the plants and the phytochemicals produced by those plants keep us well, keep us vibrant. And this is my philosophy, and we'll go a bit into what John's is, but nutrient density, and that comes through light. To me, the conversation around organics is maximum light, which makes you feel light, uplifted, not down, depressed, bloated, heavy, dense. It's about elevating. And that's what food should do. It should elevate your mood, your being, make you feel energized. And to me, organic is about not shutting down the light. So a classic I'm just going to talk to here is I've got a driveway leading into my place and it's a right of way. And on one side, I look after it and it's regenerating. There's all sorts of seeds, manuka, kanuka, flaxes, even wattles and gum trees coming up. And the other side, my neighbor takes care of. And he goes along from time to time and sprays it with glyphosate, Roundup. and there's nothing coming up, and he's just sprayed a strip, and it's literally killed everything because what does glyphosate do? It shuts out the light. Yeah. So if we're eating food that is sprayed, as a lot of supermarket food is with glyphosate, chemicals, what's that going to do to us? We are light beings, like the plants we're eating. It's going to shut down that light inside us. Something to drop in here. Why we are talking about organics. It's as important as the I guess whether you're choosing plant-based or meat or whatever diet you're talking about, carbs, protein, fat, whether it's sprayed or not sprayed, is a massive corridor in conversation. And I'm going to throw it over to you, JP, to give me your philosophy about organics and why you chose the organic route, and maybe a little bit about your personal history as well. How has organics improved your quality of life?
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more, Carl. I started off into this in a very simplistic way. I didn't know anything about health other than what my parents had taught me.
Mm.
I wasn't really interested in it because I had my health until I was 35, 40. And I didn't know I was that sick. I just didn't realize. And so when I got into this lifestyle, it was very, I was kind of shoved into the deep end because of problems, but I didn't know anything about it. So the stance I took at that time was, I'm pretty sure that if I keep the toxins out of the food that I'm eating, that's got to be a good start. And happened to be correct. That was right. I ate that way for 6 or 7 years and began to notice difference straight away in terms of my energy production. Like you say, that lightness of feeling not bogged down and weighted down. And, that photosynthesis process, the plants dig their roots into the minerals and the nutrients, the vitamins in the soil. The plant then, through photosynthesis powered by light, bring that up into the stem, into the leaf, and into the flowers. And they basically turn that into bioavailable forms of those nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, compounds that our livers need, that our bodies need. And I kind of knew a little bit of that. I researched, I study. I'm pretty fastidious with my research and study. Once I get into something, they call me the one-eyed monster. I just get on a track and I go, go, go. And this was one of them. So I got into that and I was like, okay, I'm lacking, I'm deficient in some important nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. And first of all, I'm going to go chase that with food, and I'm going to make sure that it's not sprayed. But there became like a tipping point where I was like, okay, so I'm mostly organic now. Why am I still eating non-organic? And partly it was because of finances. I had told myself that it was more expensive to eat this way. I would argue with that today. I would argue with it. I would say we can quite easily waste. I get people coming in to my shop and they'll put a $200 pack of some kind of protein powder on my counter and buy that. And then I'll get another girl or a young lady or an old lady come along and they'll have half a shopping trolley full of fruit and veg, herbs, spices, berries, all that kind of stuff. And they'll chuck that up on the counter and it comes to less. And so while I love selling stuff, I'm standing back and I'm going, there's a smart shopper. It's like it's black and white. One pack of processed protein versus half a shopping cart, and the shopping cart full of fruit and veggies is costing less. Now, I will say it is a massive battle to get people to eat fresh food. For some reason, there's something in the human psyche that makes us want to go toward well, obviously laziness, protein, high, whether it be carbs, protein, fat, meat, or anything like that. We just want to satiate ourselves.
Hmm.
We want to fill up and feel full. And so I'm going to kick right into it and say, feeling filled doesn't clean the body. And so I've become hyper aware now after nearly 10 years of this, and even longer of organic, but 10 years of my current, well, it's actually under, it's about, I shouldn't exaggerate, it's 8 years now of the type of work I'm doing with people right now, and another 7 years of organics prior to that. And that there's a vast difference in believing in just I'm eating to fill myself and feel like I can keep going for the day, and eating to clean up my system. And I don't know anything better that cleans the intestinal tract, keeps us hydrated, and also can make you feel satiated, providing you're getting enough calories, than clean, fresh food.
Mm.
And so that makes up most of my diet nowadays. Is I'm snacking on apples, I'm snacking on bananas, I'm chewing on carrots. You know, personally, I am plant based anyway, so I love that. And but I don't prescribe to any particular diet, providing people understand that they have to have enough raw leafy greens, fruit and vegetables to cleanse outside of the time they're having filling food. And personally, I prescribe to the morning for that. And the reason for that is because our liver is going into its cleansing mode from 3 o'clock in the morning when it wakes up, and then it's cleaning you up. And then you get up, and as soon as you have something to drink, you want to urinate, you want to go to the toilet, and that's cleansing, that's the flushing. So the liver's tidying the system up, but it will keep going for longer if we allow it. And the only thing that interrupts it is bringing in heavy food. And so, when we, I don't know, for example, when we're chugging the nut butters on toast in the morning, you're saying to the liver, hey, can you stop cleaning now and start producing some hydrochloric acid and bile so that it can break this fat and protein down? Now, those things aren't bad foods. They just need to be appropriated into the right time of the day when they're going to be more useful for the body. Because if you don't allow your liver to clean, like I say, people have different ideas, but for me, the liver cleans in the morning. And if you can bring in lots of fresh juices, smoothies, fruit, bananas, apples, all that kind of stuff in the morning, and just chug on those, you'll feel lighter, right? Because that's that light coming in, as Carl was saying.
Yeah, brother. Awesome. Yeah, there's two big things I picked up in there, brother, and I'll speak to one of them first. And the first is, you might go in an organic shop and notice the price is a little bit more. Um, but let's talk about this concept that health is actually wealth. Yeah, what can you actually save? And if you're stepping into a lifestyle where you're stepping away from maybe having a few too many drinks each week, you can replace that budget with really good food, which is going to clean your system up, right? It's like instead of that $25 six-pack of craft beer, put it into something healthy, or upgrade the type of food that you're going to be eating. And it's a double whammy. Not only are you dropping a habit or an addiction, you're doing something to clean your system up at the same time. And think of all the other things you're going to save on. You might be able to downgrade your health insurance, for example. Yeah, you go in terms of thinking your process is about yeah, what illness or disease might I get down the track into reclaiming your health and well-being and your sovereignty. by investing that money up front into good, clean, healthy food. And I think, as fishermen, we're probably drawn into this love of fishing as a access point into clean, healthy food, right? And I've always loved my fishing in that regard, and I step more into time in the garden and my food forest. And I find myself, while I still love a roast, still love a nice crispy skin, fatty hapuka steak on the cast iron. Uh, I'm probably finding myself being more, I would call plant-based with some animal in between.
With
Yeah,
some trimmings on the top, yeah.
that's the
And
one.
it's
That's the
nice.
one.
You can supplement those things in. You don't have to make full meals out of them every meal of the day,
Yeah.
because they are going to tax the digestive system, and
Mm,
they are going to tax the liver, because as good as some fats are and things, they will sit around in the bloodstream for between 8 to 16 hours, pork being the longest,
mm,
16 hours, and clean, easily soluble fats such as avocados and fish and things like that, they're going to sit around for 8 hours to 10 hours in the bloodstream. And so when we introduce glucose in at the same time, and this is a big problem for a lot of people getting pre-diabetic now, um, when we introduce glucose in when we don't have any fat in our bloodstream, we have zero chance of getting diabetes or pre-diabetic. But when we introduce even really good sugars such as fruit and maple syrup, honey, things like that, when we introduce those in while we have heavily laden blood with fat in it, heavily laden fat in the blood, and it's going to remain in there for many hours, while it slowly engorges each of the cells that it's trying to that we're trying to feed with glucose, then that is putting extra pressure on the system. It's introducing more adrenaline and cortisols into the bloodstream, which then mingle with the insulin, which is trying to drive the sugars to the cells to feed the cells. And this is now even the medical industry is starting to acknowledge this. Only 20% of all physicians in New Zealand, pediatricians, that sort of thing, have been retrained in the latest information, which is that it's not sugar that creates diabetes, it's fat. And when we bring in the sugars to that heavily laden fat in the blood, that's what spikes your insulin resistance, as opposed to the sugar itself. The sugar is supposed to be transported to the cells with insulin. If we don't have insulin in our bloodstream, we are in big trouble, because it does many other jobs, transports nutrients, vitamins, minerals, stuff like that around the bloodstream into the cells. So we've got to have it in there. You've got to, and you're always going to be spiking up and down in your insulin, your insulin. But what we don't want in there is cortisols and adrenaline at the very same time, because when that adrenaline mixes with the insulin, I have a little name for it. It's called Frankton insulin. And so basically it changes the form of that insulin, and then that drives resistance, insulin resistance. And so that's by combining fats and sugars. When you combine those fats and sugars in the bloodstream, you will naturally spike those blood sugars. Eventually, it'll do damage to the liver and to the system, because the liver can't convey that glucose off the bloodstream fast enough. And we're often too dehydrated to be able to get rid of it through the urine and to store it in the liver, things like that. So basically what's happening is we're putting ourselves in a pre-diabetic state. And so what I always say to people is, keep your fats and proteins for the afternoons and evenings, because during the morning, when you're bringing all those glucose and fruits and things like that, and you're trying to clean up the system, you want that liver to function without having to switch over to hydrochloric acid and bile production. And people say, oh, what do you mean hydrochloric acid production? Well, the liver actually supports and transports the ingredients required to the stomach glands to actually produce high strength hydrochloric acid and bile. So hydrochloric acid. and then the liver itself produces the bile. So it's doing those two jobs. And if it has to switch away from cleansing, then when does the liver get to cleanse? If you're doing that every day and you're bombarding your body with those fats and proteins in the morning all the time, when does your liver get to cleanse? Because it's not doing it in the afternoon. It's not doing it at any other time. It's wanting to do it from 3 o'clock in the morning through to lunchtime or through to somewhere around the morning, at least, to get a bit of cleansing going. And when does it get to do a deep dive cleanse? Because if you had an underbench filter and it was clogged up and full after 6 months and you didn't change it, well, that filter is going to grow bugs. It's going to get smelly. The flow of water is going to slow down. And in the same way, our liver, if it doesn't get some cleansing at least a few times a week, every week of your life, then by the time you hit 30, 40, 50 years of age, your filter's stuffed and you're going to get some health problems kicking in. Bugs are going to start propagating in that liver. Crap's going to build up in it to a point where it's overflowing. This is where people get black tongue and vicious cycles of shingles and things like that, when the liver starts to spill over back into the bloodstream again and toxifies the blood. So it's really important to get that cleansing going. And that's one of my main key things that I teach people every day. And it's a game changer.
Beautiful, brother. I know I can hear you're hot on the liver. Yeah. And such an important organ. And, there's a few things in there, and we've had some of these discussions before. And it might be a little good lesson to some people listening in, especially if you've been on one of my retreats, and some of what you've said may not fit with what I have been talking about on retreats. We have a bit of bacon and eggs and things like that in the morning. But notice how I sat there and listened. And actually, I'm listening and taking some things in. And isn't it good that we can do this and listen in and just
Well,
let
on the
the
flip side, though, Carl, on the flip side, it's not going to kill you to do those things.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is getting to that place where we do a little more of it. And if you were to hit your bacon and eggs in the morning, if you do that every morning, you'll suffer eventually.
Yeah.
But to do that occasionally is not going to kill you. And it's not going to cause chronic illness.
And I think it's for the men that come on retreats, if they've come from really processed diet, it's good to step into just coming back to clean foods. And we're not really having any sugar on the retreat, It's protein and fat and fruit and veggies, with the emphasis on veggies. And just coming back into brain food, really nourishing.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that too as well. Sorry for talking over you, but I think you hit the nail on the head. When you're transitioning out of crappy food and bad habits and these sorts of things, this is often the perfect lead-in, because people don't feel like they're starving themselves. They don't feel like they're becoming a rabbit. They don't feel like they can't do it. You see, the worst thing to getting into anything better is that you don't want to have to come up against the ceiling of, I can't do this because it doesn't feel good to me or whatever. If someone needs, it's like if you're an alcoholic, you might have to give up cold turkey. But if, for example, if you've got some other kind of addictions and things like that, slowly, for example, taste. I always had the saying years ago, those who chase flavor chase their death. Now, the reason I say that is because I'm talking about MSG. I'm talking about highly processed flavors and colors and all these sorts of things. I'm talking about, ladening too much salt on things. I'm talking about over processed flavors and things like that we often spoil our taste buds with. And so we don't know when we bite into an apple oh, why does that not taste as good? Or why does that not zing my taste buds like this other thing does? Or when we have a steak that has less, say, for example, salt on it or something like that, or it's less fatty, and we don't want to push people straight into something that they're not going to enjoy, because then they won't give it the time of day that requires for those slow changes to come about. For example, taste buds take a month or so to settle in and get used to new flavors. I handed I do a lot of rock climbing nowadays as well, and bit of fishing, bit of rock climbing. Those are my two fun things, right? And I do more rock climbing at the moment than I do fishing, but uh, I'll often take out my healthy food with all the young fellas that I'm climbing with, and they're all, I'm not being rude here or anything, but they're all flagging by midday. They're all starting to crack open their V's and all the rest of it. And I'll hand them over. I'll have a packet of organic, roasted chestnuts or something like this. Like something meaty that I can get my teeth into. And I'll hand them out, and they're like, "Oh, what's that? Oh, it doesn't quite taste the way I thought it would." They were hoping for some crunchy, roasted, salted up, flavored up thing that tastes like a chip. This is just a nice, soft chestnut that is like eating an egg yolk that's been cooked.
Yeah.
And yeah, but when you see it on the face, but it's like, but if you ate those each week, they get kind of addictive, and you get used to the texture and you get used to the flavor. And so this is part of weaning people out of the junk food, the fried chippies, the this, the that, the stuff that they would normally be having. And they end up going, you know what? I actually really enjoy this. I don't like having that feeling after of the sluggishness that you talked about. You want to feel that lightness and feel energetic.
Mm. Yeah, it's such an important conversation, getting away from junk food. So I think 300,000 people in New Zealand now diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, let alone all those that aren't diagnosed still walking around with it.
Yep.
It's a phenomenal percentage of our population, easily solved just by coming back to whole foods and getting out and moving and a little bit of exercise. You mentioned before, JP, about you raised a question, when does your liver get that break? And so I'm going to go into maybe the next theme and get your thoughts on it. So I was instantly answering it in my head that I presume this week my liver has had a break because I did a 48-hour fast earlier in the week. So I'd be keen to get your thoughts on fasting. Food. We talked about all the chips, all the processed food. Food. If you really get hungry and you're walking down the street, you won't have to go far if you're in a town or any city in New Zealand to find some food, right? And it's not how reality was for our ancestors. Food was valued. It was quite often saved for appropriate times, um, eaten with reverence instead of this constant need to constantly be eating. For me, um, every so often having a fast is a good way just to check in. First of all, at the start for me is about it's just taking away that subconscious urge to go and open the pantry up or open the fridge up. And I noticed that first day how often that happens. You get up to go and get something to eat, and you're like, "Hold on, I'm fasting," just because it's in your subconscious. And even if you only usually eat a couple of meals a day, it's still there because those hunger pains are starting to kick in. And it's just a great way, I think, to check in with your body and how your body is feeling, because those signals are definitely coming in hard and fast. And are you going to react to them straight away, or are you just going to notice them, regulate yourself, and just carry on with your day and not get sidetracked or distracted by those feelings? So that's the first day for me. And then sort of that really nice light feeling kicks in, and those triggers start going away from me, and you're like, Yeah, that was largely the mind talking. My body's starting to feel really, really good. That second day, for me, I can't be as physical. I've got to time it around somewhere where I can, say, for example, do some reading a book, doing some meditation, going inside because you really got to go into your inner power on that second day. Maybe not so much physical out doing stuff. But for me, you talked about that flavor hit that everyone's seeking. That first meal at the end of 48 hours was the flavors. No, I roasted some veggies. My daughter was home, she's vegetarian now, so I made a plant-based meal. Roasted some veggies, kumara, camu camu, pumpkin, and some roast garlic, roast beetroot, and then added in some leafy greens out of the garden, some spinach, some cos, some pineapple sage. Added in some macadamias, cucumber, avocado, and a few other things, and not really much else. There might have been like a little bit of cumin, a little bit of turmeric, a little bit of Celtic sea salt, but not much other flavor. But man, when all of that came together on the plate after 48 hours, and I was just like, wow, the flavor hits incredible. Because when you're not eating all the time and then you go to eat, or if you've cut out sugar and then you go and eat something like some fruit that's a little bit sweet, the sweetness just hits you. You've reprogrammed yourself, recalibrated, and you don't need that intensity of flavor like you used to. You're actually appreciating the natural flavor. So talk to me, brother, about your views on fasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, I'd say that you're making me hungry with
Ha.
uh with that meal. I should have been there. But well, let's first of all talk. I've got sort of maybe 3 points that I'd like to bring up on it. Let's talk about the mechanics of just briefly
Mhm.
what's actually happening to the body when we're going into fasting. So technically, we're not actually in a fast until uh, you're 24 hours. The
Mhm.
moment you click over 24 hours and 1 second, you're in fast. So that's when the body, down to a T, to the second, activates what we call true fasting. Prior to that, you're just going without food. So your body is starting to get ramped up in the sense that it's like, okay, so I'm going to need to shoot some glucose in from the liver. The liver has two storage compartments, one's for glucose and one's for glycogen. And think of the liver as a camel. And, you know, that camel's what gets you through the desert. And so, and I'll preface it with one thing. I generally don't recommend fasting for someone with chronic illness. I I, I think it's a wonderful thing for the spiritual aspect, and you'd be with me on that, right, brother? Um, it really takes you out of the flesh. So you've got these fleshly lusts and instincts and desires that you were talking about. You just want to run to the fridge when you wake up, or you just want to get into some food. And these things are what we call fleshly desires. Okay, so they're fine. Everybody's got to eat. Everybody gets hunger pangs, but we overeat, right? And we overindulge and stuff like that. And this is on a spiritual basis. This is not controlling the flesh, as it were, because yeah, you can eat a chocolate bar a day, but eventually it's going to hurt you. Or yes, you can have this certain treat yourself every day, but eventually it's going to hurt yourself. And so essentially having some control, and this is where I recommend it for people who are still young enough, vital enough, have a good enough liver to where they've got good glucose storage, good backup, high nutrients, vitamins, minerals, all the rest of it's been loaded back up over time. And they can handle that sort of thing like we used to be able to when we were younger. And so there's that spiritual aspect. There's the asking yourself the question, calibrating, am I well enough to take away that vital energy source? I'm not sure people understand the liver when it comes to basically it atrophies. It begins to, when we treat it badly over 30, 40, 50 years, the liver goes from a nice sponge that's pretty much a shapeshifter and has three parts to it that are constantly moving and doing their thing and filtering blood and processing hormones and doing over 2,000 tasks a day, to something that looks a little more like what we call cirrhosis of the liver. So hardening of the liver tissue or scar tissue. So when it scars up, our storage compartments, those camel storage compartments that get us through the desert times in life or through lack of food and things like that, they begin to shrink and they don't have the capacity that they would normally have. And so that can be kind of detrimental for someone who's already on Mattress Island or has some chronic health condition where they're already suffering and that liver's already pretty stagnant, pretty sluggish. Because you got to remember, this is a filter that's supplying blood to your heart every day. And it's also putting in all of those compounds, nutrients, vitamins, hormones, adrenaline, everything's going through that liver daily. It's also filtering medications and alcohol and drugs and all these sorts of things. So it's doing a tremendous job. And if it relies heavily upon glucose, as does the brain, contrary to most popular belief. And we won't go into the brain right now, but the brain is made of glucose, glycogen connective tissue. In fact, the cells are called glial cells, which comes from glycogen. And or glial cells, they call them, but glial cells, I call them. And this is why they get the nickname sweetbreads when people eat brain, or, that's sweet. So the liver, likewise, relies heavily upon glucose. And if those storage banks that supply the compressed glucose, which is glycogen, and the ready-to-use glucose that fuels our brain and our cells and our bloodstream and keeps our blood sugars balanced, if that drops too low, we become hypoglycemic. And then we get into, and you notice that when you're fasting, Carl, or anyone who's fasted, you get that lull in energy where you're flagging. You said the second day, I've got to rest and meditate and things like that. And that's 100% accurate. You can get away with 24 hours, but as soon as that 24 hours and 1 second clicks over, you've got to meditate and just drop out all physical activity, because your brain is physically switching over from glycogen to where the body says, we've got to conserve energy. And now, if you continue activity on any strenuous level, you're now clicking over into adrenaline. And so that's I just thought I'd bring up that interesting little point. I don't want to get too technical about it. But so good points. Those are good points. And if like even when you're teaching your classes and things like that, sometimes it doesn't hurt to just help people to understand that it's not one size fits all. I always say to my customers, I say, are you strong enough? Are you well enough to do a fast? And if the answer is, I'm not feeling up to it, not just because I don't want to do it or, I want to eat, but I'm not feeling up to it because I'm a little weaker than normal. I'm a little hypoglycemic. I'm already out of energy and I don't want to start running on adrenaline because my adrenals are already flagged, like I've got adrenal fatigue. And that's a good time to say, maybe you should build up your nutrient density, your vitamin density, your compounds, your glucose, liver storage, things like that over a bit of time. And then you can go into those types of things, and then don't do them for too long. Like you say, that's one way where you can give your body a rest, there are other ways. And personally, my favorite because I deal with the chronically ill every day more than I do with people who are well. So I do train athletes up to Olympic level. I do, give all the health advice to those sorts of athletes and things like that. And I'm, to an extent, an athlete myself. My brother was an Olympic athlete. And I like functioning on that kind of level, but I'm also like, okay, it's not one size fits all. I'll assess and I'll let them assess whether they want to do it, whether it's a good idea or not. And if not, they want to do it later, they want to build up to it. That's good as well. So hopefully that kind of that gives you and the viewers my impression of how we have to be a little bit careful that we don't throw, and I'm sure you're well aware of this and do this on your one-on-one basis with people as well, Carl, that you're assessing those people and saying, hey, how about you try a day? How about you try a few hours? How about you build yourself up for that? And my favorite way of cleansing for anyone who's not really, really well, which is most of the people that we deal with, is you don't have to stop eating, but you can do juices and smoothies and things that aren't going to tax the bloodstream, the liver, the digestive tract, and things like that. And that's the other way the body cleanses. So I'm on both camps. I like anything people want to do, providing that they have knowledge around how to do it safely.
Yeah, beautiful, brother. Well, I always say when men come on my retreat right at the start, we connect and take our shoes off, connect into the earth. A lot of men haven't even been doing that, grounding in something so simple. Connect into that intelligence above and connect into each direction. A lot of men don't pay attention to that, where the sun is during the day. It's important to know where the sun rises, where it sets.
Yep.
The trajectory of the sun. Then I ask men, what's in the center of all of that? What is in the center of that, JP?
Well, I mean, I haven't been asked the question before, and I have to be honest and say I don't know the answer to it, but I could take a guess.
Yeah, go for it. Take a guess.
I mean, for me, I do these things. Everybody does them in a different way.
Yeah,
I do the grounding because that's super important, right? Connect yourself to Mother Earth.
Yeah,
and that has, the studies show that has massive benefits in your health, in reducing stress, in refueling ourselves with the protons, neutrons, and all these other things that are floating around in our bodies that we have to be grounded, we have to be earthed at least some points in the day. For a long time there, when I was sick, I would use the grounding mats and grounding sheets and things like that. But what's even better is just getting out there with your bare feet, patting animals. They go out on the ground and then they bring those good things back to us, and we pat them and we release our stress and tensions out into them, and then they go back out on the grass again. They're fantastic. If you're sick and you can't get outside, have an animal around. It's amazing.
Around in, 100%.
Yep. And then of course, like you say, knowing where the sun rises. I face the sun every morning just out here. It comes up over the east. I've got my tiny home out in front of me at the moment here, but it's going to be shifted soon. And so that comes up and I face the sun every morning and I do my little rituals, like you, right? And then when the sun's going down in the evening, I'll often get out here into my food forest out the west here, the west and the southwest. And I'll get out there and I'll be looking up at the sun going down We get beautiful red skies across on when it's going to be good weather. The next day we get beautiful red skies, and you look up there and you're just being what blessed, thankful, being present, right? Being present. And I'm eating food straight out of my food forest, like you, in the evening while I'm watching that sun go down.
Beautiful.
So I'm preparing my food in the morning when the sunshine, the light, and I'll often take my shirt off and it'll just be beaming through on, even if it's a cold day, that sun's beaming off, and just taking that in. The food I'm eating is full of light. It's made from light. We're solar beings. And so for me, it's all about light and life. And I would say that that's where the center of it all is, if I was to take a guess, but I don't know where you were going with it.
100%. Yeah. And the center of all that is you.
All right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I always say to men, if there's five of us, each of us has got a different center.
Mm-hmm.
In a world where we're told and prescribed all the same medicine, each of us completely different.
Yep.
You are the medicine. Yeah. And only you know your body. And we've all made different choices in our life that have led us to where we are right now. Like you say, what you suggest for the Olympic athlete might not be the same for someone who's had some sort of diagnosis from a doctor or is facing chronic illness, even a terminal illness, right? And so each one of us has our own center from our own choices, but also the choices of our ancestors and the journeys they've been through, and the ancestors either side of us. They say that on each shoulder we have something like 40,000 ancestors that walk behind us on each shoulder, right? That think about all the permutations and combinations of where they might have come from and what they've passed down in our DNA through their diet, all the permutations and combinations of their diet over the years, what they've eaten, the lands and continents they came from, the journeys they went through, the battles they went through, yeah, the migrations they went through, the even catastrophes, famines. They had to fast sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting you bring that up, Carl, because I go down a similar route with my customers and my clients. I say to them, think about the generations and generations of, for example, just toxicity coming down through. For example, the male is the one that gives the hemoglobin. So your children have none of your mum's blood in them, their mum's blood in them. They're only the dad's. And a lot of people don't know that. That's part of the reason why your wife takes your name. That's to pass the bloodline on to the children. And the children take the dad's name. That's because they are purely 100% dad's blood. The sperm gives the hemoglobin and kicks that off in the egg, and that's the start of the bloodline. And obviously they have DNA from mum and from dad, but not the blood. The blood is very interesting. And so if we've got, for example, if you're from Western descent, European descent, back in the 1800s, early 1800s to late 1800s, they drank mercury elixirs, and they would stand over a Bunsen and snuff mercury vapor. That was a stimulant, and it made people feel better. Just like, for example, if you're depressed and you have bad thoughts and depression and all the rest of it, they'll give you lithium, right? Metals are a stimulant.
Yeah.
And they're not good for you, but they're a stimulant. They'll make you feel good in the moment. And so part of actually the reason that the allopathic world of medication got the name quack doctor. See, they'd like to make us think that the herbalists and the homeopaths and the naturopaths and everything were quacks. But in actual fact, they got the name quack doctor from the people and it almost collapsed them and bankrupted them, the whole allopathic medication civilization, or sorry, societies and things like that, was because the people would come out from the mercury elixirs and various other crazy things like, you know, like aggressive bloodletting and leeches and all the rest of it, feeling terrible afterwards. So they'd come out feeling good, and then eventually the health would crash through these excessive heavy metals and excessive bloodletting. And when you sort of triggered my thoughts when you were talking about the ancestors sitting on the shoulder and things, we often don't think about how we got our toxicity before we were even conceived and born. It's all coming down through that bloodline. We get all of dad's, the Mad Hatters, the mercury, the toxins. Back in the 1800s, people wouldn't even believe this, 1700s and 1800s, they were spraying lead arsenate and mercury, methyl mercury, and things like this in toxic forms from World War I, World War II, and earlier even on our fruit and vegetables. It was like the Wild West out there. It was cowboy days. It was way worse than it is today. Back then, they would laden this stuff on. People would walk down through the cow dips and the animal dips with their animals through these things. And this is part of where polio and all these sorts of things started to break out, was because the amount of DDT and sprays and things like that were getting poured on the people. I got videos. I'd love to show you the video, and I'll send it to you, of all around the world, France, Sweden, everywhere, spraying DDT all over their children to kill lice, and it's a pesticide, and they'd spray it down the lakes and rivers and streams and everything. They'd spray ponds and down the streets. They would spray it down the streets. They'd have DDT in a shaker as a supplement on their food. You wouldn't believe. Just borer bombs. My dad would put borer bombs in our roof to kill the borer off in the Remo home. And that was full of DDT.
Yeah, wow.
And we would come home, we'd all leave, go down to the park, and we would, get away from it all, as you did. You'd put the bomb in and off you go for a holiday, a picnic or whatever, and then come back, and we'd sleep in those beds with the DDT powder all over our beds, all over our houses. And DDT was the number one catalyst for chronic disease and illnesses, along with paraquat and Agent Orange and all those different things that came out of World War I, World War II. And so we're already hypertoxic from 200 years, 300 years of industrial revolution, chemical revolution, wars, radiation, and all the rest of it. So we've got that on our shoulders, as well as our ancestors and as well as all these other things. And that's one of the reasons why I'm big on detoxing.
Yeah. Detox, and something for the men that are listening in to this kōrero to think about is one day your descendants might be having this kōrero and talking about what you did. Okay, we're always looking back and going, oh, my ancestors did this or that. Sooner or later, you're going to have descendants that are having these kōrero. And what are they going to be saying 7 or 8 generations ahead of you? Like, even some of us might even think about, in our backyard, are we going to plant a kōrero? Oh, no, that'll take 100 years to grow. I won't be around. Well, what about the people that come after you? They might want to see it. Yeah, they might treasure that plant, that tree, that rako anchoring in that energy on your property. They might appreciate the kōrero gum they could burn in a ceremony. All these things to think about. And what are you going to do to clean up your bloodline? Especially if you're a young man, young tane, that's still to have children. What are you going to do to clean up your bloodline so when you have kids, you're passing on most beautiful DNA for your future generations? These are some of the things we're going to be diving into on the Aotearoa Men's Wellbeing Summit. Little thoughts about Stewardship is, we're talking about what are we doing in the community? What are we doing to look after the ocean and the land? But always the first step is coming back to what are we doing in our body, our mind, our spirit. Starts with us, then it ripples out. These actions we take. It's why we try and just go right back to basics on the gatherings and the retreats that we hold. Putting the compost back into the ground plant some trees for every gathering and every retreat. Put something back into the ground. Some of those might be natives, but some of those might also be kai for future generations. Different strata of trees that we're going to plant in our food forest. Some of them might be for the next season ahead, but thinking ahead in the strata levels of what might still be around even once we're gone.
That's right. Not neglecting the, I've done my long-term stuff like medjool date palms that aren't going to give me perhaps any fruit in my lifetime. Wait. Well, should do 15 years, I think, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm 50 this year. I'll see that one through, but my any generation that comes after me or anyone who takes the property after me is going to be able to have those date palms, those dates. But then thinking about the short term, the herbs. I know you're real big on your herbs and your capsicums and all those things that you grow. Just bringing those in season by season. And I want to encourage people, if you've got a garden or you can get your hands on sprouts or anything like this, the world of good they do for your microbiome. Now, everybody goes on about microbiome today, and I'm big on it too, from the perspective that understanding what is real microbiome. Now, unfortunately, with the pills that we take for probiotics and things like that they're not made particularly well, in the sense that most of them won't survive your hydrochloric acid in your stomach. Even though most people today have weak hydrochloric acid that really isn't digesting their proteins properly and separating their fats from proteins, the microbiome, the true microbiome, scientifically comes from living on living food. So when we consume the living food, there are trillions and trillions of what we call, and you'll like this name, Carl, live elevated microbiome, or live elevated probiotics. Yeah. Now, the reason, I'll just explain just very briefly, live, they live on living food. Anything that lives on dead food and dying food produces acid. So the bugs that live on dead and dying food, they produce acetic acid, which is vinegar. And so anything that lives on living food, they're a totally different type of bug. They're not they're an aerobic bug. So they like oxygen, whereas an anaerobic bug produces acidity. And this is good to know, because when we're putting stuff into our body, we want to know that the bugs we're putting in are the right bugs. Now, the only bugs that'll make it down through your hydrochloric acid and proliferate your ileum, which is a lot further down next to the colon, just before your colon, is this 30-centimeter piece of intestinal bit that your stools go through. They've got to get down to there, and they've got to proliferate the ileum so that they can do the methylation. You hear a lot about methylation today. This is a really important little piece of work that has to go on in the body. And it's only done in the body by these probiotics. So these probiotics that come from that apple you just picked off the tree and ate, or that plum that had that nice little haze on it. It's the trillions of, it's not just waxes and alcohols and things. It's probiotics that are living on it. You pick up that kale or broccoli or whatever you're eating off the garden, that haze that's on it, that's probiotics, trillions of probiotics. Every time you have those sprouts, those things, leafy greens, those things that grow without being sprayed or too heavily washed or cooked, are providing your stomach and your ileum with the most powerful set of probiotics that have the ability to go down past that hydrochloric acid, even when it's really strong hydrochloric acid. They're designed to be able to handle that, and they can go through it. And they proliferate the ileum. And as the food goes through and your stools go through that ileum, they'll take the cobalt and many other compounds such as sulfur and various other things, glutamine and all the rest of it. And they'll take those and they'll methylate them into methylated forms, such as methylcobalamin, which is your B12, methylated forms of sulfur, which is often we'll take MSM, which is a sulfur that's been methylated. And these compounds are super critical for the body. You can't survive without B12, for example. And the reason people are so deficient in B12 today, even if they test high, they're still deficient, and I'll explain why. But if you go without B12 for too long, zinc, B12, magnesium, things like that, you'll really suffer in your health over a long period of time. You'll become chronically ill. Farmers have been giving their animals zinc and magnesium supplementation for 70 years now, knowing that the DDT and the glyphosates and things like that have wiped out the zinc in the soil and the magnesium and things. And so they're supplementing, they're doing good for their animals, but what are we getting? What are humans getting? Do we get prescribed that? No. Do we get told that we need it? No. But the animals, the farmers know that they need it. And so when we don't get that B12, that zinc, that magnesium into our system, and we don't get those fresh fruit and vegetables bringing those probiotics in, we can't methylate. Now you'll get a test. This is very, very intriguing because most people haven't thought of this. Even doctors haven't thought of it. When you get a B12 test or a test that shows your B12's high or low, that is taking a snapshot of your blood in the moment. And if you've consumed, say, an animal product such as eggs, dairy, or meat, that animal has B12 in it. Now that B12 is animal B12, and it doesn't help you one little bit. It doesn't work in your system. It's a completely different hormone. But the test can't differentiate between human B12 and animal B12. And so it looks like you're high on the test, but in actual fact, you're low. And your cells are craving for B12, and you think you're high in B12 already. So you don't supplement, or you don't get the leafy greens and fruit and vegetables that you need to bring it in. And so your body can start methylating again. And this becomes hypercritical when we'll often get a lot of people come in, they're vegans or plant-based, or not so much plant-based, but mainly vegan, and for ethical reasons, and they'll come in and they're like, I've been vegan for 12 years or 5 years, and I got really low B12 levels. I'm like, yeah, because you are low in B12. That's not because you're vegan, but it's because you don't get enough fresh fruit and veg. You don't get the probiotics. And secondarily, you don't supplement with a good quality methylcobalamin and adenosine. So we see this often, and then someone will go, they'll come back 3 or 4 weeks later and they'll say, I just had another blood test, my B12's back up because I went back on eggs or I went back on dairy or meat. And they'll think they're good. What they don't understand is they are not good. They're still low in B12. The tests show high because they're eating foods with animal B12, and it can't differentiate between human B12 and animal B12. This is such a trap for people. And so the doctor goes, oh, there you go again, another vegan that's low in B12. Well, if you test me, and I've been plant-based for 8 years, my B12 is through the roof. One, I methylate really well. secondarily, I supplement with a high quality B12. Now, if I stop supplementing, I'll still be high in B12. It'll drop a tiny bit, but I'll still be really high in B12. And it'll blow the doctors away because they think, oh, vegans 8 years should be really low in B12 by now. Not so. Almost every person that I've seen who doesn't have much in the way of fresh fruit and vegetables, but is high on meat, eggs, and dairy, they're all super low in B12. And if you put them plant-based, the blood within a month's time will give you the perfect reading of where they're really at, and it's super low. And the only way to get that back up is to do that thing. So contrary to popular belief, we do not get B12 from animal-based products. We get the animal's B12. And we do get a little bit of cobalt from the animal, but we're not methylating it, so it doesn't become methylcobalamin. And so, the WHO and science, medical research and science will say, oh, yes, you can get your B12 from animals, but they don't differentiate. It's like saying all sugar's the same, honey, raw sugar, whatever, it's all the same. It's not the same. It's different. And so you can't just categorize all B12s as being helpful to the human body. So there's a little bit of a kicker that most people don't know and won't think about.
But you can process it if you're having the leafy greens and the whole foods. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Well, the animal-based ones aren't useful to the body at all unless they're bringing in cobalt that the plant-based probiotics have the ability to methylate that cobalamin.
So the plant-based is the foundation, and then the additional comes from what you might get from the animal products.
Yeah, because like we're designed so that we can consume meat and dairy and all these sorts of things. This is natural. We're designed to have those, and they're all beneficial. Now, what wipes out a microbiome? A high acid diet and a low oxygen environment and processed foods, alcohol, drugs, all these sorts of things wipe out our microbiome. To some extent, the old jabbies, things like that. All of these things are proven over the years to wipe out microbiome. So I always say to people, keep a good base of leafy greens, sprouts, go out and forage in the garden, things like that. Yeah, lemon, that is a fantastic
lemon is not acid, is it, JP?
Not acid. You know that lime you just cut?
Yeah.
Or lime or lemon?
Lemon. It's a lime. Yeah, lime.
It's lime. It's not called lime because it's green.
Yeah.
It's called lime because it sucks the calcium or the dolomite or the alkaline calcium. Calcium's alkaline. It sucks that up out of the soil, takes it up to the fruit, and then when you consume it, that rebuilds your teeth and bones. It rebuilds the enamel on your teeth. It doesn't destroy it. What destroys teeth and what destroys bones is a high acid diet. And those acids are, they should be obvious, but they're not. And processed foods are acidic. Cane sugar is highly acidic. In fact, it's not linear, but on the scale, it's 10,000 times more acidic than water. So, and obviously all processed food has cane sugar in it, right? And so you're going to get acidic. Being dehydrated makes you acidic. Consuming too much salt makes you dehydrated and acidic. Having too much in the way of pickled foods and ferments and too much in the way of vinegars because they're acetic acid, they're acidic. Too much in the way of nuts and seeds can become acidic. Too much meat and fat can become acidic because nanolipid particles of fatty acid. So they're all acid. So we just don't want to overconsume them, and we want to balance them out with alkaline fruit and veg. And this is where you and I agree on something. uh, in terms of, I love the way that you're putting your people into fresh, uh, fruit, vegetables, and herbs and spices and berries and things like that. These are super critical for keeping alkalinity in the body. And so I really 100% agree with that.
Yeah, one of the very first plants I planted on our property 7 years ago when we shifted up here, came to look after this land, limes, and just try and incorporate them in every meal. And
Bro, I remember that.
fruits and
I remember. Didn't you do a post on it or something?
yeah,
Has it
yeah,
been
yeah,
10 years? That's crazy because I remember when you were building your cabin and you started, the first thing you wanted to get into, you were like super gung ho stoked to get into your garden.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember you planted your first trees and you posted it. That was
yeah,
it.
yeah. And that was a lime. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. Well, it's the first thing I did as well. So when I planted my 70 trees in my food forest, the first things I put in was my citrus.
Mm.
I wanted them to get established because I go through hundreds and hundreds of limes and lemons every year, if not thousands. When I run out of them on my trees, and I've got lots of trees of them, I buy them. I get them both from the shop organically, and I also buy them off. And I'll buy them by the crate load,
Mm.
and I'll be doing 3 or 4 or 5 limes a day, lemons a day. There's nothing better to build that calcium store up in your body, and this is a healthy calcium, because there are other calciums available, but some of them are not as critically healthy for the body to use for remineralizing teeth and bones. And I needed that a lot.
Mm.
Everybody does, and because what I'll mention this, when we're acidic, our body will use its own calcium and magnesium to alkalize the system. You can't go and drink Kangen water or mineralized water to try and get your acidity down. These are not the way the body operates. The body uses fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, and berries to bring in critical calciums and things to bring back that mineralization and to lower acidity. So when we get acidic from eating McDonald's and various other processed foods and too much fat and too much protein and too much nuts and seeds and too much dry food and too much grains, we become acidic through those ways, or too much cane sugar, too much salt, all that stuff. When we really load those things up, we become acidic. We get acidosis of the blood. The body's going to pull calcium from your teeth and bones. This is why we're getting osteoporosis so early. That's why we're getting teeth decay, because your teeth are time capsules. They'll take 5-10 years to reveal and break through like a piece of rust. It's rusting from the inside and you don't see it, and it kind of just pops out the other side. That's like a tooth decay. You're demineralizing teeth from the inside. You're demineralizing bones from the inside, and now they're getting porosity or that osteoporosis, which basically means it's becoming the critical structure of it is becoming compromised and porous or holy and becoming weak. And so only way to build that back up, as you've alluded to, is bringing in those critical things that bring them back in and bring the alkalinity back to the body.
Yes, brother. And I put my hand up and say, been to the dentist a bit lately, the tail end of dealing to all of that, tail end of it. And hopefully that situation gets better from here.
Well, that's the thing. Often people blame their new diet and their health food and all the rest of it, or their lemons and limes. They blame it on the tooth decay that's coming. But you've got to remember that was coming to you 10 years ago. That was building. And so it's often when we make a switch and change that these things begin to manifest themselves. It's a little bit like a woman going into menopause or something. Well, it used to be that these symptoms that they get, that the so-called menopause symptoms, would coincide with a certain age when they were going into menopause, and so that the young doctors would blame the old doctors. Knew that the older 100 years ago the woman didn't suffer in that way. And the young doctors, this was when toxicity really started to ramp up across the world. And the young doctors started to blame menopause and say, oh, it's a woman's problem. But men were going through the same problem. They were getting all the same symptoms, the overheating liver, the hot flashes. I get men coming in on a monthly basis saying, I've got menopause, because their liver's overheating. I'm like, no, you just got a sick liver, mate. You just need to do this. So when it got called a woman's disease, the men were very stoic back in those days, and they would shut up and never say another word about it because they didn't want a woman's disease. But what happens is these things they coincide with events in our lives, and then we put two and two together, but correlation is not necessarily causation. And so when you're having your tooth decay now and you're having these teeth problems, you're starting to get receding around the gum lines and all these these exposed, worn out areas where our teeth start to get exposed and they get sensitive. These things were on their in the direction not to blame what they've just currently done, like they've just changed their diet or just stopped using fluoride or just done this, and then all of a sudden they're getting tooth decay. It's like, no, that was coming from 5 or 10 years ago. And that really just helps them a lot to not blame the thing on the moment.
Yeah, brother. Oh man, this has been a rich kōrero, JP. You are a detail man, and you're a man of structure and a man of research. So thank you for sharing all of your wisdom, brother. And thank you for your support of this year's Aotearoa Men's Wellbeing Summit. And thank you for what you've donated that's going to go into the kai that we're going to be cooking. And we've also got a bit of a giveaway pack that we're putting together. And how we're going to run this is make sure you like whatever you're seeing here on, whether it's on YouTube, on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you see this. Drop us a like, drop us a share, drop us a comment, and all of those will go into the draw. So you can do that on each channel, and then you're going to go have more shots in the draw for this prize pack that you're going to get from Organic Nation and JP. And I might just talk through a few of the products, and you can give us a bit of a rundown, brother, on I might pull out a few things that you got on your shelf, tell us a little bit about them. So in the prize pack that we're going to give away to anyone who's commenting, liking, sharing, got some turkey tail mushroom. Tell us about these capsules, brother. Why is mushroom an important part of what we're putting into our body? Fungi.
Well, I'd hit my favorite point about mushrooms. There are some mushrooms out there that are, and I'm big on viruses and bacteria and believing that they cause chronic illness. And so there's a range of mushrooms such as chaga, reishi, turkey tail, lion's mane, these sorts of mushrooms that are highly antiviral. So not only they're fantastic for our brain, for our chemistry of our brain, for phytochemicals and nutrients and compounds that feed our liver, fantastic to feed gut microbiome. There's no end, and they're super dense in nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and compounds that are even still unknown by science today. But my favorite is that they're highly antiviral and antibacterial. So anytime we can get viral load down, I can tell when I've got viral load. I get a little more inflamed. I get a little more kind of just off color. I tend to go for the wrong foods and things like that and do the wrong things, stay up a little too late. I know when I'm under viral load. Most people don't know until they've got shingles or until they've got, glandular fever or scarlet fever or any of these types of things, mumps, things like that. Then I've got a virus. But I know on a day-to-day basis whether I've got high or low viral load. And I bring in mushrooms every day for that specific purpose. I bring in my chagas, my rishis, the turkey tails, or the different blends of mushrooms. And this one's a fantastic one. Turkey
immunity.
For immunity. Like, there's only one way to bring viral load down, right? That's immunity. Because if your immune system can fight the virus, the viral load will come down. And so along with all the compounds and things that do attack those viruses carcasses and keep them at bay, the most important thing is our immune system can fight them. So yeah, critical key, high immunity equals low viral load.
Also, in the prize pack, turmeric capsules. I see fermented turmeric and ginger. Man,
Yep.
also on the topic of immunity, and man, there's some superfoods out there that I definitely just load a lot of my kai up on retreat with turmeric. It goes in a lot of things like my omelets and and my roast chickens, etc. But tell us about turmeric, bro.
Well, turmeric's fantastic for coloring your food up. If everybody knows a great curry with the turmeric and whatnot in it. But if you've got potato and it's looking a bit bland and white, and you want to color it up and you want to use something natural, turmeric will make that nice and yellow, like a yellow potato. It's fantastic. But also, it's a highly anti-inflammatory. So the curcuminoids respond with our receptors in our body. They bring down inflammation. They have a whole lot more purposes than that. But one of my favorites is combining turmeric with MSM. And MSM is a methylated form of sulfur, a monosulfur. And those two can bring down inflammation and they can help reduce pain. So if someone's in pain, they've got headache pain or they've got joint pain, they've got inflammation in the body, this is fantastic for bringing that down.
Yes, brother. Joint pain. So many men out there, tradies, plumbers. So many men come to retreats with joint pain, and 4 days in, they're like, "Oh, feeling quite good." And I'm like, "Yeah, it'll be all the layers of things that were done, but it'll definitely be the turmeric that you've had in your diet, without a doubt." We've got some goodies that our chef Kevin from the Whole Food Kitchen is going to be cooking with some herbs herb spread, super green herb spread with hemp seed oil, and I see good quality ingredients like nasturtium, dandelion. I'll be bringing some fresh stuff out of my garden as well. Thyme, calendula, sage. I mean, that sounds like the goodness, brother.
That one's fantastic, actually. Waiheke herbs. So it comes from Waiheke. And lots of our customers love that product. They love the clean oils that are in them. And obviously they're loaded with herbs, basil, thyme, all those different ones. They're great bug killers. So very, very antibacterial. If you want anything antibacterial, people go to honey and manuka and things like that. That's fantastic. But if you want fantastic antibacterial, once again, to bring down phlegm, mucus, reduce your UTIs, all those kind of things. And just in general well-being, getting rid of ear infections and allergies and things like that. Your herbs are super antibacterial and they will work towards that. And as you're consuming these each day, along with your garlic and various other things, those are just going to start bringing your immune system back up, reduce your bacterial and viral load. And once again, you're going to start feeling a lot better.
Yeah, brother. On the topic of garlic, minced garlic, you can go. I use a lot of fresh garlic. Try and choose New Zealand garlic, not the big packs that come from China. I think it's probably going to be better for you. But if you're getting a tub of minced garlic, always, a lot of the ones that you get in the supermarket are going to have preservatives in. Always have a look at the back and see what they've actually got in them. I used to buy jars of minced garlic all the time, and then I actually had a look at the back one day and I was like, what are all those numbers on there? This can't be that good for you. So I am glad to see these obviously don't have them because it's got a big organic at the front. Yeah. And garlic is key in a diet, right? We've got some other goodies like mirin, fermented rice vinegar, some organic red wine vinegar. These are all in the giveaway. And brain complex, magnesium, ashwagandha, Phyphenol rich berry powders. These are going to be pretty good for you. A lot of what we do on our retreats is all about mental health, and I know we're going to have a lot of listeners here who have been rebuilding their mental health. Tell us why it's good to supplement with something like this, brother.
Well, often we don't get a lot of that sort of thing from our food, and particularly if we're on the run and people are stopping and grabbing pies and doing all these sorts of things, there's none of that good stuff in there. And most of it is devoid of anything really, really good. The body will grab at and extract anything it can out of food if it's got a deficiency. But if some people come into the shop and they'll say to me, "Oh, I don't believe in supplementation. We should be able to get everything from our food." Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, but there are some supercritical vitamins, nutrients, and minerals that we just simply don't get a lot of. We don't get enough of variety of as well. So I'm a big fan of supplementation. Obviously, it has to be clean because, there's more people out there sick from supplementing because they've got troublemakers in their supplements. They've got fillers, they've got flow agents, they've got colors, flavors, citric acid, and all these different things. They might be full of magnesium stearates and various other things that are just added as fillers and things like that aren't necessary, and they're actually gut irritants. They kill off microbiome. They destroy our body's ability to absorb nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. So they're actually working against you. Personally, as clean as possible, and you can have a mixture of vitamins in single same serving, capsule, pill, powder, whatever it is. But check out the source. As Carl said, check the ingredients list at the back. And if you don't know what it is, like nowadays we've got AI, it's so easy to check up what the health benefits are or the side effects are, and just keep it clean. If you can bring in the clean supplementation, your immune system once again will build up. Immune system's critical, guys. Like you have to have your immune system built up over time. It will take 3 or 4 years. It doesn't come over like you can't just go healthy tomorrow and then 2 weeks later you've got a good strong immune system. This doesn't happen like this. It takes 4 months just to build up critical things in your blood. For example, you go get a blood draw, you go give blood or something like that, which I don't recommend to anybody. You're losing months and months and months of critical immune system that has to get rebuilt up over a 4 or 5 month period. It puts a lot of tremendous strain on the bones and the marrow and everything to reproduce those blood cells. So you got neutrophils, basophils, you've got white blood cells, red blood cells, all these different things. You've got all of dozens and dozens of these chemistries and things going on in the blood that build up your immune system. And if you don't build those up slowly over time, you're gonna end up suffering because the viruses and the bacteria will end up getting a heads up. The load will become too high, and then it drags the body down.
Always good to start now, not tomorrow. Start today. Yeah.
100%.
Interesting times we're in, or we've been in interesting times for a while, really. You think it's 2026 now. She was got pretty interesting in 2020. We're talking about the topic of immunity, and always good to start now. There's a lot going on out there in the world, and I like to remind everyone once again, you are the medicine. Yeah. Part of what me and John are talking about here is not looking up in the hierarchy to a politician, to a surgeon, to a doctor to find our medicine. It's like, what can we do for ourselves, starting with the food that we're eating, and even just simple things like getting out there and moving, meditating, breathing. I heard the word oxygen before, and I immediately thought of consciously breathing every day. I'm going to keep going, and something really controversial for me. Everyone knows I'm not a big carb person, let alone processed carbs. So what I'm about to show here, that's going in the prize pack as well. But I thought it was a good talking point. Because if you're going to treat yourself with some carbohydrate, like some dirty pasta, make sure it's not dirty, that it's the real deal, that it isn't sprayed, that has come from places where they actually look after their soil and doing it in the traditional way that they have done for generations. Tell us about your thoughts around pasta, brother.
Well, like you, I'm not a big fan of certain types of carbs. Um, I'm not a big fan of grains. I
Mm,
stick to three grains pretty much: oats, millet, and quinoa. They're
mm,
all alkaline grains. They don't make you acidic. They're not bug feeders because they don't contain the type of gluten in them that other types of grains do. And
mm,
so I'm right on board with you there. I'm just not a big grain guy. If I'm going to have a pasta, it's going to be a clean one. It's going to be
mm,
one that is made of, once again, those. I don't do a lot of rice either. And, rice is hugely carb loaded.
mm,
I'm not personally against carbs, but I prefer carbs like kumara,
mm.
pumpkin, kama, all these different beautiful carbs, and all of your fruits have carbs in them and things like that. I'm more on board with those. I'm not so much on the grain thing. But if
Mm.
I'm going to have a pasta, and occasionally I'll do,
Yeah, yeah.
um, everybody can have one that's not going to kill you. But I'll make sure it's a clean one for a start. It doesn't have those sprays in it, right? Because a lot of the wheat and stuff like that's heavily sprayed. Um, and I say to people, look, food's not a religion to me. Um, I try and do what treats my liver well, as opposed to treating myself too much.
Mm.
I think as humans we over treat ourselves. If we treated our dogs and our cats and things, and we gave them treats like we have treats, then they'd be chronically ill as well.
Yeah.
And so, you know, hey, just don't have too much in the way of carbs when it comes to grains and things like that, and try and go more towards the kumara, the pumpkin, the potatoes, and all those kind of things. And one of the things you can do for yourself, because along that diabetes track that I was talking to you about, Carl, before, was if you're gonna if you're gonna have fats and then you're gonna have carbs, you will get that whole pre-diabetic thing going on, that spiking of insulin, the fat in the bloodstream making
Mm.
it to the cell faster than the glucose hanging around. So that things you can do to combat that is, and I think this sort of somewhat goes along with your protocol as well, where, uh, you stay well hydrated.
Mm.
That way, there's somewhere for the sugar to go if there's too much fat on the bloodstream and the sugars can't go anywhere. Somewhere for it to go. It can be flushed out, right? If you're hydrated. Secondarily, if you're going to have carbs and fat together, instead of chucking a whole bunch of oil and say dairy or cheese or whatever into your potatoes, your pumpkin, your kumara, that's a pre-diabetic disaster. If you're going to do those high carbs, have them by themselves with some salad or with something, instead of putting them with the meat, or like, you don't have to get super strict on it, but just be mindful that that little afternoon nap that you're wanting to have after you've had a big meal, and you put
Mm.
a real sugary dessert and carbohydrate dessert with a big fatty meal, that's not a siesta. That's a pre-diabetic coma,
Mm.
right? So you're putting yourself into a coma. This is why people want to nap in the afternoon and stuff like that after a big heavy meal. You're putting yourself into a coma. So just know that you're stressing everything out in your body. Your cortisol levels are through the roof, your adrenaline's through the roof, but it can't get out of the bloodstream anymore. And so you're just in this pre-diabetic coma. So carbs, keep them on the low down unless they're really clean carbs like fruit and veg.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%. Whole Foods. You want to know more? In-store Organic Nation, like it says, spread the word. Get in and see JP. There's his email address and phone number there, and website organicnation.co.nz. Thank you, brother, for an awesome talk. Thank you very much to anyone who has listened in and come right to the end. Thank you for having the patience, and thank you for allowing the time for us to have this conversation and for listening in. I think it's really good in this day and age to listen to some long format talks like this instead of scroll. Good to dive into some knowledge, some wisdom from someone like JP. And if you would like to find out more, go and see JP in store. Also, get along to one of our retreats, our gatherings, experience it in person, what clean eating, modikai, whole food with life force feels like. You know, the Aotearoa Men's Wellbeing Summit. Going to have Kevin there from the Whole Food Kitchen. Got myself, we've got other brothers that live this lifestyle. Get along and rub shoulders with us. Find tickets on our website, www.theprovider.co.nz. Also got lots of whole food recipes there to check out. Thank you, JP. Thank you to everyone who's listened in. Ka kite anō.
Appreciate it, Carl.
Thank you, brother. New Zealand men are at the wrong end of most health statistics. We've created a wellbeing event especially for the wild hearts of men. Connection, brotherhood, clean eating, moving in nature, holding each other to account. If you're doing it tough and you feel like you're in the trenches, this is an opportunity to find some elevation, answers and purpose. The Aotearoa Men's Wellbeing Summit is about walking the walk, embodying mental and physical wellbeing. 14 to 16 May 2026, beautiful Apautiri, Coromandel. Rub shoulders with men at the forefront of creating positive change in Aotearoa. Come on your own or bring your team. Book your tickets at www.theprovider.co.nz. See you there.